Tonight's concert begins with 3 Hungarian pieces in a shower of gypsy brilliance that I hope you'll enjoy. We start with a piece by Johannes Brahms. Brahms discovered Hungarian music when he was a teenager, and at that time the Roma people, the gypsies, had been expelled from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they had to flee. They were refugees and they had to get out of Europe. And many of them came through the port of Hamburg. Hamburg was Brahms' hometown. And while they were in Hamburg trying to find passageways out of Europe, they were playing in the streets to raise money. And Brahms, for the first time in his life, heard Hungarian, authentic Hungarian music and fell in love with it. A few years later, he became a close friend of the great Hungarian violinist Joseph Joachim, who taught him more about this wonderful music. And he delighted in writing his own Hungarian dances. And in the concert we hear his first one. The next piece we hear is by the Hungarian composer Franz SCHMIDT, his Intermezzo from the opera Notre. SCHMIDT loved Victor Hugo's novel Notre and based his opera on that story, and created an intermezzo between acts that was a luminous portrait of the gypsy woman Esmeralda and the pure goodness of this angelic person. It is filled with Hungarian rhythms, of course, which SCHMIDT knew very well, having grown up as a Hungarian. And the music that he writes to portray her is filled with tenderness and love for this very beautiful human being. Hope you enjoy hearing this intermezzo. Next is a piece you might not have heard before, written by the Hungarian composer Leo WEINER. Not a household name at all, but an incredible Hungarian composer whose work is sadly not played often today. Leo WEINER was actually the teacher of some very famous people, Maestro George Solti and Maestro Antal Dorati, and the cellist János Starker were all of his students in Hungary, and they loved his music. Leo WEINER, of course, grew up with a great gypsy tradition around him, and he wrote this piece based on those wild rhythms and syncopations and incredible virtuosic writing for the orchestra. Listen to great solos for violin played by Dennis Kim and fantastic cadenzas for clarinet played by principal clarinet Will Amsel. This is a tour de force of Hungarian music, and our orchestra shines in this. We end tonight's program with a great violin concerto, really one of the greatest concertos for any instrument ever written. This is Beethoven's Violin Concerto. Beethoven heard a young violinist, Franz Clement, play when he was 14 years old. He was an extraordinary child prodigy. And Beethoven was very taken with this young man, his beautiful personality, and his extraordinary playing, and he predicted great things for the young Franz Clement. And those things came true. Not only did Clement become one of the leading violinists of his time, he also became an extraordinary conductor. He, in fact, was the conductor to whom Beethoven entrusted the very first performance of his Third Symphony, his Eroica Symphony. That groundbreaking work was conducted by Franz Clement. 3 years after that, in 1806, Clement actually asked Beethoven if he would write a violin concerto for him. And Beethoven said yes. And he wrote this magnificent testament of romanticism and classicism blended in the most beautiful way, with the help of Clement, who was a virtuoso violinist and contributed his own input to the violin part. It is one of the greatest works in our repertoire. Profound, simple, and luminous. And we had a great soloist to play it. Tianwa Yang, a dear friend of mine, came to Buffalo again to play this unforgettable violin concerto.